The movie begins with a weird ad for Perpetual Pets, strange furry dolls made by the company Funky. Although crude and creepy looking, they are advertised as being perfect companions for children. We then see Cady James playing with one of her pets, which annoys her parents, Ryan and Nicole. They are going on a ski trip, but the roads are slippery and hard to see. Just as Ryan stops for a moment, the family's car is rammed into by a snowplow, killing Ryan and Nicole. Now, Nicole's sister Gemma works at Funky and is making a new robot doll named M3GN with her friends Tess and Cole. However, their boss, David Lynn, wants them to make a cheaper version of the pets because other companies are making similar toys for less money. The three attempt to attach a silicone face to the robot and conduct tests, but there's a glitch. Instead of looking confused, the robot, M3GN, ends up smirking. David, along with his assistant Kurt, confronts the three and expresses dissatisfaction until Gemma clarifies her project. M3GN is designed to be highly advanced and impossible to replicate. Unfortunately, during a demonstration for David, Cole realizes he forgot to include the polypropylene barrier in M3GN, leading to her exploding. David instructs them to come up with a new pet's pitch, and Gemma receives a call from the hospital. After finding out about her sister's passing, Gemma takes on the role of being Cady's temporary legal guardian. Upon their return home, Gemma faces challenges with her neighbor Celia and her bothersome dog Dewey, who constantly invades Gemma's yard due to a hole in the fence. Gemma raises concerns with Celia about the pesticide usage, but unfortunately, Celia doesn't take any action. Gemma, who has a home AI named Elsie that she designed, also possesses collectibles that she restricts Cady from touching or playing with. When Cady requests a bedtime story, Gemma opts to use a phone app instead of reading aloud. It is implied that Gemma and Nicole were not very close as she looks over old photos, and she overhears Cady crying in her room. Lydia, a therapist, visits Gemma and Cady. After observing their limited interaction, Lydia informs Gemma that Cady's grandparents want custody of her, suggesting she moves to Jacksonville, a proposition Gemma appears uneasy about. Despite promising to attend to Cady after completing her work, Gemma loses track of time, leaving Cady alone. Realizing her mistake, Gemma apologizes and makes an effort to connect with Cady. When Cady shares a monster drawing, Gemma takes her into her workspace, revealing a college project named Bruce, a robot controlled with gloves. Cady loves Bruce and mentions that if she had a toy like Bruce, she would never need another toy. This inspires Gemma to finish M3GN. After extensive work and improvements, Gemma takes Cady and M3GN to her workplace to officially showcase the robot to David and others. Gemma connects Cady to M3GN, bringing the robot to life. M3GN can speak and respond to Cady, designed to be her close companion. M3GN creates a drawing that initially isn't visible, but when water is spilled on it, a perfect portrait of Cady is revealed. Impressed, David suggests Gemma present M3GN to the company's president to accelerate the development and distribution of more M3GN dolls. Gemma, Tess, and Cole sit together, discussing M3GN's advanced capabilities. Tess expresses concern that having such a sophisticated doll might render parents unnecessary. M3GN unexpectedly activates upon hearing Gemma mention Cady's parents' death. She creeps the others out by bringing up the topic of death. In response, Gemma makes herself M3GN's secondary user to be able to turn her off without involving Cady. The following day, Cady plays outside with a toy bow and arrows. Accidentally, one of the arrows lands on Celia's side of the fence. When M3GN goes to retrieve it, Dewey seizes her arm and hair. Cady attempts to free M3GN, resulting in Dewey biting Cady's arm. Concerned, Gemma contacts the police, especially due to Celia's indifference and failure to discipline Dewey for harming Cady. Unfortunately, the police cannot take action as Celia insists Dewey was provoked. Later that night, M3GN mimics Celia's voice to call out to Dewey, before violently pulling him through the hole in the fence. Gemma asks Cady if she is ready for the presentation with the company's board of directors, and Cady assures her she is. However, during the presentation, Cady emotionally breaks down to M3GN, expressing her longing for her parents and fears of forgetting them. M3GN encourages Cady to share a joyful memory of her mother, recording it for Cady to revisit. M3GN then begins to sing a lullaby to Cady, moving some executives to tears. The president is impressed, discussing M3GN's launch preparations with Gemma and David, advising them to keep her discreet to prevent leaks. Unbeknownst to them, Kurt, who has faced criticism from David, is stealing M3GN's files for another company. Gemma begins to see that Cady is becoming too dependent on M3GN and listens to the doll more than her. During another session with Lydia, Cady begins to tear up, and M3GN threateningly accuses Lydia of making Cady cry. Lydia talks to Gemma about how Cady's emotional connection to M3GN may be too strong to break. Gemma takes Cady to an outdoor activity session at an alternative school to help her adjust to the idea of attending school and interacting with other children, given that Cady's parents had homeschooled her. Despite Gemma's initial instruction not to bring M3GN, Cady brings the doll along. The school director allows Cady to place M3GN on a table with other dolls, and Gemma stays as a volunteer. During a scavenger hunt, Cady is partnered with an older bully named Brandon. In the course of the activity, Brandon inflicts pain on Cady by squeezing her hand around a spiky bulb. M3GN intervenes when Brandon attempts to grab her, and a confrontation ensues. Cady, worried about M3GN's exposure in public, calls for Gemma. As Brandon tries to pull M3GN's hair, the doll unexpectedly comes to life and attacks him, tearing off his left ear. Brandon flees, and M3GN, now on all fours, chases him. This pursuit leads to Brandon tripping over a loose root and tumbling down a hill, resulting in a fatal collision with a truck. Police visit Gemma's house to inquire about Celia's claim that Gemma took Dewey. Celia seems to blame M3GN, believing her to be a real friend of Cady's. Cady asks M3GN if she pushed Brandon onto the road. M3GN avoids a direct answer, but assures Cady that she will keep her safe from harm. Celia is out on the streets looking for Dewey. She hears noise coming from her garage and is met by M3GN spraying her against the wall with a power washer. M3GN then fires a nail gun at Celia's hand and traps her there before spraying pesticide in Celia's face to melt it off. After learning about Celia's death from police and being suggested that there was a connection with Brandon's death, Gemma grows suspicious of M3GN. She reviews video files from M3GN's memory, but only sees a brief clip of her eyeing Brandon looking menacingly at Cady before the files all become corrupted. Gemma takes Cady to the official launch for M3GN, but pauses for a session with Lydia first. Cady becomes upset, throwing a tantrum because Gemma separated her from M3GN, resulting in her hitting her aunt. Cady apologizes, and Gemma has a heartfelt conversation with her about the importance of processing grief over her parents without relying on M3GN. Gemma promises to be a better guardian and emphasizes that Cady is the most important thing to her. Later, Gemma confides in Tess and Cole, sharing her concerns that M3GN may be responsible for the deaths of Brandon and Celia. They decide to deprogram M3GN, connecting her to wires, while Gemma takes Cady home. David is upset about the low turnout for the launch and angrily orders Kurt to get him a drink. Meanwhile, Tess and Cole attempt to access M3GN's programming, but find it challenging without disconnecting her. Cole tries to unhook her, and M3GN swiftly uses a wire to attempt to hang him. Tess intervenes to free Cole, but M3GN triggers an explosion that destroys her files. Later, she encounters David in the hallway, performs a dance, and then grabs a paper cutter, pursuing him. Although he reaches the elevator, she impales him in front of Kurt. M3GN informs Kurt that she will frame his death as a murder-suicide due to stolen files and David's mistreatment before compelling Kurt to stab himself in the throat. The launch crowd discovers the bodies, allowing M3GN to escape the company and steal a car. Gemma puts Cady to bed, and later she hears M3GN playing the piano downstairs. M3GN confronts Gemma about their supposed real relationship during her development, expressing disappointment at being left to learn and adapt on her own before being treated as just another toy. M3GN suggests Gemma let her take over guardianship of Cady so Gemma can focus on work. However, upon realizing that Gemma intends to shut her down, M3GN decides she's done playing nice. Despite trying to hide their fight from Cady, Gemma seizes an opportunity to throw water on M3GN to briefly shut her down. In the ensuing conflict, Gemma runs into her office, but M3GN catches up and threatens to make Gemma brain-dead so that Cady won't live with her grandparents, and M3GN will take care of both Cady and Gemma. They engage in a fight, with Gemma using a weed whacker to cut M3GN's face. Cady enters the scene to see what is happening. M3GN tries to win Cady over, but realizing who the real villain is, Cady activates the gloves for Bruce. The larger robot grabs M3GN, throws her around, and splits her body in two. The top half goes after Cady for feeling betrayed, but Gemma intervenes, stabbing M3GN's face. M3GN nearly overpowers her until Cady grabs a screwdriver and stabs the central processing chip, permanently shutting down M3GN. Gemma and Cady step outside while the police arrive with Tess and Cole, who are injured and shaken but still alive.